Hello everyone, I'm Mr. Furlong, and today we're talking pedigrees. We're going to look at a specific kind of chart today known as a pedigree. Oftentimes when the word pedigree comes to mind, you think of maybe one or two things, like pedigree dog food. Well, actually, there's a reason why they call it pedigree dog food, is because a lot of times dogs have pedigrees. Here's my dog from a long time ago. His name was Bear. He was the only purebred dog that I've ever owned. And he had a pedigree. We could look in the records to find out who his parents were, who his grandparents were, and so on. And we can find out information about them. And that's kind of like what a pedigree is. So to quickly define this, we could say that a pedigree is a chart that shows the presence or absence of a trait in a family. So we're going to spend some time looking at how do we interpret a pedigree. Let's take a look at a couple of characteristics of a pedigree. First of all, we have the generations. Each one is labeled generation 1, 2, 3, or 4, however many there are. So we know that, for instance, parents 1 and 2 here are in the same generation. Notice that every individual is also numbered. So we have a 1, 2, starts over 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. We also see a bunch of circles and squares. So the circles represent the females, which means then, of course, that the squares represent the males. You'll also notice that some of them are colored in and some of them are not. So for instance, this person here, that square is colored in. That would show that that person has that affliction, whatever the pedigree happens to be about. If they are not colored in, that means that they don't show that trait. In this particular pedigree, the only other person on here that shows that trait is way down here in generation number 3. We also see a bunch of lines. So anytime we see a line between a circle and a square, that is known as a marriage line. And the lines coming down off the marriage line is the child line. So we would know, for instance, that these two parents had 3 kids. Now these are also arranged in order of birth. So we know that this one is the oldest, there's the middle child, and there's the youngest. And the youngest is married to someone else, and they have 2 kids. We can also easily identify a person by their position and number on the pedigree. So for instance, if I was talking about this person who has the trait, I would say that they are person 3-1. So they're in the 3rd generation and they're number 1. If I want to talk about this person, their father, I would say, well, that is person 2-3, 2nd generation, number 3 on the pedigree chart. Well, let's take a look at a pedigree. And let's use something pretty simple. So let's just say that we're looking at brown eyes, which will make a big B, and blue eyes, which is a little b. In this pedigree, all the people that have blue eyes, the ones that have the recessive trait, those are the ones that are colored in. So we immediately know everyone's genotype that has blue eyes because they're showing that recessive trait. Everybody else on this list is showing the dominant blue eyes, but what we don't know is what is their second allele? Are they homozygous dominant or are they heterozygous? So for instance, if we look at this first cross, we have a blue-eyed person and a brown-eyed person. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kids, and 3 of them have blue eyes, which means that mom has to be heterozygous. So now we know what her genotype is. If we go on to the 2nd generation, person 2-2, who has brown eyes, well, they have a blue-eyed child, so we know what her genotype is. If we continue on, we know that person 3 here has brown eyes, and we know person 3-4 has brown eyes. What we don't know, though, is are they homozygous dominant or are they heterozygous? Now, they have 3 kids. All of them have brown eyes. But we don't know, maybe they're this or they're that. If we don't know, we put a dash behind it. Right, so again, we don't know exactly what they are. We do know, however, that person 2, 3, because Dad has blue eyes, he would be this. What we don't know is, well, what's their other allele? Could be both, either dominant or recessive. So sometimes we don't always know. Again, with person 2, 6, they have brown eyes, but we know that they got the blue eye allele. And person 2, 7, they have brown eyes, but again, we know that they would have to have the blue eye allele because they have 2 kids with blue eyes, and of course we would know that they would also be heterozygous as well. So when we don't know for sure, and of course we know what this person is also for sure, if we don't know for sure, we put that dash, which tells us we know they have one dominant allele, but we don't know what the other one is. And so this is one of the benefits of being able to do a pedigree. Let me show you an example of a real pedigree. And this is from the royal family. This goes all the way back to Queen Victoria. And they had a particular trait that ran in their family called hemophilia. Now if we take a look, for instance, here is the current Queen of England. We see Prince Philip here, and of course there's Prince William, who of course married Kate, and they now have 2 kids, so we can, that should be a square there. They have a boy and a girl. Anyways, in this family, they have this trait of hemophilia, which is deadly. And if we take a look at this large family, and of course, if you take a real close look here, who did the Queen marry? Why, that's your cousin. Anyways, royalty can only marry royalty, for crying out loud. They can't worry about marrying commoners. Anyways, it just so happens that in this branch of this family tree, they don't have this condition. So they don't have to worry about it. But their relatives had this condition, and many of them died. And if you take a really close look, notice that all the ones that have it are squares, which means that they're all boys, which tells us that this is probably going to be an X-linked trait. Now we do see something different here, like in Queen Victoria, who had a it's half light, half dark, and that's because she is a carrier. So she would not have it, but she would be a carrier. Some of these names might even be familiar. Like, for instance, there's Anastasia, who is a relative of the current royalty in England. Anyways, so this is the kind of stuff that we can get from doing a pedigree. You're going to have a chance in class to work on a bunch of these, and I can't wait to see you in class.